This weekend, we celebrate the 4th of July, the birth of our country. So we want to take a look back at one veteran's story about how he served the United States during World War II. Local veteran Jerry Myers is no longer here to tell us his unique story. But as News 4's Claire Kellett explains, thanks to his daughter, his legacy will live on.
Because he's my hero. What he went through in the service is just overwhelming. To be a young boy, to go overseas, to fly and drop bombs, to go through all the things he did, and then to be shot down and be a prisoner of war and be in the 80-day death march.
An emotional Kathy Myers contacted News 4 about telling the almost unbelievable story of her father, Jerry Myers. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Jerry felt it was his duty to serve his country, even when he was not of legal age.
He was 17, so he got my grandma to fib on his birth certificate and say that he was born in 23 instead of 24, so he could get in the service. That's how bad he wanted to protect his country. It was that important to him.
Like many members of the greatest generation, Jerry did not feel comfortable speaking about his time during the war.
I was probably in my early 40s, and that's when I told him, I and generations after me needs to know your story. We need to know. Well, I'll never remember. So would you please sit down with me? I was a fast typer then. I said, will you talk if I type?
That's where this journal came from, the war in Jerry's own words.
I was inducted into military service on January 9th, 1943. I reported to Scott Air Force Base on that day.
I believe I was there for about 3 days in total. During that time, I was equipped with uniforms and a GI haircut, which shocked me. I took aptitude tests and was asked what I would like to do in service. I said one thing I was interested in was to be an airplane mechanic. To my surprise, they honored my request, and I was then put into the Army Air Corps and sent
to St. Petersburg, Florida.
After training, Jerry, who was a navigational engineer, and his crewmates shipped off to England and started bombing missions over Germany.
The bombing missions, especially over Berlin, gave me a satisfaction that I just might have helped
drop a bomb on Hitler himself. D-Day, June 6, 1944, was a very special day for us. We flew 2 missions that day. The first mission was just before the boys started landing on the beaches. We dropped our bombs on the beaches to hopefully wipe out most of the resistance our boys would meet. The scene from the air was unbelievable. The English Channel was absolutely filled with ships of all sizes. Just off the Normandy beaches was a semicircle of battleships firing away at the beaches. We could see them rocking in the water as they were shooting the big shells. It was just after daylight on June 6, 1944.
Then, as he was close to finishing up his 30 missions, his plane was hit.
When I bailed out of the plane,
I remember going out. I remember hearing the plane leaving me and fading away in the distance. I also remember pulling my ripcord on the parachute, but could never remember any more until several weeks later. That was on the 16th of August, 1944. The next clear memory that I had was in September or October, when I found myself on a train headed for Stalag Luft 4 in northeast Germany.
That memory lapse was due to what happened to him when he bailed out.
He was the only one in his crew that survived. But his parachute came down and it caught in a tree and dangled him in a pond, and he couldn't get loose from his parachute. But a German girl saw him coming down and hollered for her dad, and she ran. She couldn't get him loose, and he was drowning. So her father jumped in and got him out. He was not breathing. So her father did CPR for a while and finally got him breathing, and they hit him in their barn.
But when he was found by German soldiers, he was hit in the back of the head with a rifle, and he blacked out.
So that's how we learned a lot. Dad didn't know that. He was unconscious. He knew he was shot down and came down in a parachute, but there was a big gap in there, what he remembered between drowning and then the soldier hitting him in the back of the head.
Jerry spent months in one of the infamous German POW camps, Stalag Luft 4. But then the Russian army started advancing into Germany, and Jerry and thousands of American troops were forced to march hundreds of miles over 3 months.
A lot of the 80-day death march, he was kind of out of it. And he also, many of them got diphtheria while they were marching. And so they would be out of it and sick. Some died. They would stop sometimes in barns at night.
It was in one of those barns that Jerry found a literal needle in a haystack and stitched this picture.
And he got his handkerchief, and he sewed a picture, a perfect picture, with the original plane that they flew in. He embroidered a picture of that plane, and it's a really good picture of it.
After 80 days, Germany surrendered, and the troops found themselves free, and within a few weeks was back in the States and discharged from the service in late 1945. After the war, Jerry returned to the St. Louis area.
He hadn't gotten past like the 5th grade in school because they had to work crops. So he got his GED first, and then, or diploma, they called it then. And so he went to Wash U at night, and he got his degree in engineering.
And left a lasting legacy for his family. And thanks to his daughter, future generations will be able to read his words.
As a general statement, I really was treated good in the Air Force. I do feel like God was with me all the way through my experiences in World War II.
Claire Kellett, News 4.
It was not until years later that Jerry found out about his injuries when he was caught in his parachute. The farmer that saved him wrote a letter to the War Department wanting to know if the American he saved was still alive. This is a copy of that letter. When it became declassified, Jerry got that letter and discovered how he had been hit in the head by a German soldier. For that, he received a Purple Heart. After the war, Jerry suffered from chronic headaches, but years after discovering that he had been hit in the head, he got an X-ray and doctors found a bone chip, so he had a surgery late in life and his headaches finally went away. Wow.